All right, we're recording. We only got an hour and 57 minutes on this SD card. So I'd like to thank Mokanaman for agreeing to help me with this interview. Let's see, this is our first time. We were talking a little bit for about an hour before this, and for the first time, and yeah. So this is the first take on this interview thing. A couple of things I'd like to say before I start asking you a bunch of questions. Kampai. So first, when I first saw Mokana Man's videos, I was looking for how-to videos on, how to do modifications and how to paint and what is important, how many coats do you need, a bunch of stuff that I didn't have any information on. I didn't know where to get this information. A lot of how-to videos out there were not very clear, not very informative, in my opinion. The information seemed to be like, oh, it's common knowledge that you have to do this and you have to do this. It's like nobody knows this unless they've really studied a lot of this stuff. So when I came across, may I call you Mr. Britain? Is that all right? Or
just call me up.
or Mokanaman. But when I came across this video, I was like, oh, wow, shit, there's some fucking easy to understand, very in-depth information. I was like, oh, okay, well, that's good. And then, so that was good. And since then, I was like, oh, this guy is really informative and good. I mean, he doesn't have that many Transformers. How many Transformers do you have?
I never really watched Transformers when I was younger and never got into it. I do have a Jetfire from the Michael Bay movie sitting on top of my cabinet.
Oh, there you go.
He's a blackbird, and I kind of like that.
Yeah. So he's only got one Transformer. The blasphemy, the evilness of his non-Transformerisms. But, so, let's see. I think, some of the questions, what is, I think a lot of people who watch review videos, sometimes they ask me, should I buy this figure or should I buy this figure? And my opinion is like, I don't know. I really can't tell you, what is good. And I mean, I can tell you if the shit falls apart, if the shit is brittle, if there's a bunch of defects on the product that I got. But as far as telling you, what to buy, I don't know really if I can do that. I mean, if you like red, then go buy a fucking red car. If you like blue, then go buy a blue car. So, what, in your opinion, makes a good figure? A good Gundam, since you're a Gundam master or whatever.
Two type of things people collect are either your pre-painted things, PVC figures, or your styrene or resin model kits. And the most important thing about the model kits is when you're building it, are they suitable to the skill set? Is that all right?
Yeah. So what you're saying is, well, I think, how do you judge your own skill set?
Well, this is something you should know personally. If you build a kit, which when you start building out kits, you're going to buy a lot of things you like, and the first few models, when you start learning how to glue and paint, you most likely are going to mess up if you don't have the experience. So the most important thing is you need to learn which type of kit you enjoy building and keep pursuing that while continually experimenting. If you struggle on a certain type of kit, like if you didn't like a kit with a lot of parts count, or if you didn't like a kit that's too simple, you try to start avoiding that as you develop yourself as a modeler.
So, not the way I went about doing Gundams is I bought the cheap one first, and I bought a blue one with the little helmety thing on it, with like a little cresty Roman looking thing with a shield. Do you know?
The Tolgeist?
It starts with a T, I think.
Yeah, Tolgeist.
Okay. Anyway, I bought that guy first, and I was like, because it was cheap. I think it was like 500 yen or 700 yen or something like that. I was like, wow, $7 for a little toy. I was like, all right, I'll figure out how to build this thing. But and then what I did, like a crazy guy, I think I saw a Too Old for Toys video where he was bending some knees or something like that, and I was like, oh wow, I need to get more of these things. And then I was like, well, if Gundamers use airbrushes, because that's what I thought at the time, was like, who the hell is going to paint this thing with a brush? Because it's going to take forever to paint this thing, and I didn't know. So the way in my thinking, I was like, oh, well, if I'm going to start this Gundam-y stuff, I should probably buy an airbrush. And then I ended up spending like $500 on the air compressor and the airbrushes and the capture thing and all this stuff. I don't think that was probably the right way to go about starting Gundam cosplay or gunpla. What do you need to start up with, and do you need airbrush? I don't think you need an airbrush, but do you need to get the brush set and all this other stuff, or what would you recommend for someone just starting into the gunpla thing?
Well, obviously, the biggest important element in starting out is your budget and how far you're willing to go. If you are budget conscious and you don't want to hand paint, which if you do hand paint, you can learn techniques to make it smooth enough to imitate an airbrush. You may want to,
which I don't know. Yeah, but isn't that dirty?
It is carcinogenic, so it is harmful for your lungs, but if you spray outside and wear appropriate masks, it's perfectly fine. I think it may be a little harder for dense countries where everyone's living in apartments.
I've never tried painting a Gundam with like a spray can. I have seen people do it, but they're out in the backyard, and is it more expensive in the long run to buy like cans? Because those cans, it seems like so much paint is not on the part. It's just like hitting the cardboard behind it or the newspaper. I don't know. I never used paint like those paint cans, so
That is a good observation. There is a lot of waste due to overspray, where it is going over the model, but that is essential to getting an even coat. It is true in the long run, it is going to cost you more money, but if you are short on cash at the time, it is better to spend about $30 on 3 cans of spray than 500 on an airbrush setup. So you can get saved up. There's also a very popular movement in America where there is very cheap enough can paints in Walmart that's compatible with all kits, and they do look quite decent, but I'm unaware of this brand paint being available in the rest of the world.
Yeah, there's something weird with the audio right now. I don't know what it is, but
That's feedback.
Is it what?
Feedback.
So I
What
see.
we might try to do is get headphones so our speakers aren't interfering with your camera.
Yeah, but then how am I going to record the audio from the speakers?
Oh shit.
Or I can just speak this way, and then keep the microphone away from the speakers.
I'll be back in a second. I'll grab some headphones.
Okay.
To do second cut or
Well, I'm just going to splice it in there. I stopped the camera and then So I'll just splice it back in there. Can you hear me well?
I can hear you well.
Okay. So, so your recommendation for beginner gunpla people is to buy or learn the techniques for using brushes and the whole brush. Is there like golf? When you start golfing, um, you can buy a cheap ass set because it really doesn't matter if you're really that good. Once you get to the higher levels, you're probably gonna want to get a custom club and stuff like that. The brushes, when you start off, I bought the cheap brushes because I didn't know any better. Are those important, or how important are those brushes? What do you think?
Well, the market is saturated with. Is it getting better? I can still hear the feedback.
It's probably from my speakers on my microphone. So, okay, I'm gonna keep the microphone away. But
Yep. So is that sounding a bit better?
yeah, I think so. What do you think?
It's still feedbacky.
I don't know what to. Okay, well, this is a test. We're trying it out. See how it goes. If I can figure out better software, then I'll do that. But should I use mic? Well, then we can't even hear the audio, so I have to use the speakers. So, so as far as you sounding over here, it sounds a lot better. You're not dipping in and out. Maybe from your side,
Okay.
it's dipping up and down, but from this side, it sounds good.
Okay. So if it's only my side, I can put up with that then.
Okay. So back to the brushes. Saturated with the what?
If we're talking about paintbrushes, the market is saturated with them with many different arts and crafts and hobbies.
Mm.
What you need to do is go to an art supply shop instead of a model shop, because anything with model kits or used for the hobby is automatically more expensive. So if you go to an art shop, you can find very fine tipped paintbrushes and very soft bristles at a fairly affordable price of a few dollars and use them for many years. The most important thing to hand painting is brush care, that you clean them properly in the appropriate thinner and store them without them ever leaning on their bristles to keep their point.
I'm not doing that right now. They're all leaning on their bristles. Yeah. So.
You probably want to start changing that now.
So, so what's the big difference? I'm just taking notes as you answer these questions. What's the big difference between a model shop and an art supply shop?
Well, the best way to explain to people who are hobbyists going into an art shop,
Mm.
traditionally model paints are always more appropriate for fine scale painting, where we're able to fit them down to the point where they don't look streaky on the plastic. With artist paints, they're painting a 2D surface like a canvas, so the paint can be quite streaky, which is used to create different effects. So you want to only buy the paintbrushes from the art supply shop and only your paints from a hobby or model shop. A lot of people's experimented with art supply shop paint, and that normally does not come out too well unless you're doing something like a diorama.
Mm. So you're saying that the the model paint, specially designed for models, uh, won't run or won't smear as easily?
Uh, they won't create streaks when you're hand painting.
Streaks are those what that those are brush marks?
Correct.
Ah, I see. I see. So, and that's due to the size of the pigment or something like that, or
Also, density of the pigments
mm,
and the mixture of thinner and pigments. When you are hand painting, the biggest trick is to thin down your paints and do many layers.
we're getting some mic feedback or something, waves now, but up and down, but um, yeah, it's wavy again. So, which leads me to another question. I've seen a lot of people on YouTube doing the way I mix the paint is when I get my little vial of paint, like 10 milliliters of paint, I throw it into the bigger bottle, that gradated 30 or whatever 40 milliliter bottle, and then I add two things of so I give it a 2 to 1 mixture. I guess that's what, two things of thinner to one thing of paint, and then I shake it up in my little mixing bottle, and then I think it's pretty good for airbrushing. I've seen a lot of people put or mix it inside of their little paint, the little paint bottle that it came in. How do you figure out the how much thinner, and I mean, how do you do that, all that paint mixing inside of that little bottle? Do you have to dump some of it out and put it somewhere else, or?
Well, the way you're mixing paint for airbrushing is actually quite smart and ideal. That's a lot less work on your behalf. So, well done on that. What I normally do is I'll put a little bit of paint in a small dish and add thinner to whatever application I'm doing it, being airbrushing or hand painting. And what I normally do is add the minimal amount of thinner and swirl the paint around like wine and see how it's sticking to the side of the wall of the jar or whatever it's in. If it's sticking too much, I might want to add a little thinner, but if it's not sticking enough, I want to add more paint.
So you're just eyeballing it.
That's what I do.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, isn't there a formula to the mixture ratio, or there's no or just, I don't know.
Formulas vary from manufacturer paints, type of paints. I've got many different paints. I sometimes airbrush with acrylic, enamel, lacquer, depending on what mood I'm in and what color I want for the model.
So, mm, I, I'm just thinking about storage of the remaining paint. If you don't do it all at once, if you don't mix it all at once, then you're going to be left with an unknown quantity of unmixed, unthinnered paint, and then you're just going to have to eyeball it all again, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that seems kind of a pain in the ass. I don't
It
know.
is.
Yeah. So,
That's why I reckon your situation is more ideal.
so I would. I thought that's why they made those things, and I thought, because I didn't know how to do this when I initially started. That's the way I thought everybody did it, until I started watching videos on people who didn't do it that way. I'm like, why aren't you doing it this way? It's more complicated to do it your way. And then because I didn't know what the ratio was, and I thought the ratio was 2 to 1 and stuff like that. But all right. What was the other
I
question?
just have,
Huh?
I'm sorry, I just want to touch on one thing with what you just said
Huh?
about the right way and wrong way you see online. The interesting thing about this hobby is there's that many tutorials and equipment out there available for us to do it how we want to do it. So realistically, there is no wrong or right way of doing things. If eyeball it every time and you mix it in batches,
Mm.
the idea is to try to put as many different people out there making as many different tutorials so people choose what style they want to build their kit instead of just that one everybody's doing.
That's true, and I completely agree. The
That's why we need to have more tutorial channels on YouTube doing different things than everyone doing the same thing.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, you do have those dumbasses out there that go, "Hey, you're doing it wrong. You should be doing it like Reuben. You should be doing it
yeah,
like Alan.
yeah.
People should not be doing this."
Don't do what Reuven does, please. Don't do what I do.
No, you have a lot of good observations, and you are a good hobbyist, even
Well,
though you do have your
uh-huh.
way of doing it.
Yeah, I have my way, and that's only because I thought that was the way it was supposed to be done. Because I was trying to follow the paint manufacturer's recommended mixing ratio. So I was like, okay, the paint manufacturer says to mix it at a 2-to-1 or something like that, and then I see other videos on like people mixing, like when I watch like professional car painters or airbrushers, and they're like, oh, I'm using this candy red and mixing it with this kind of retardant at this because the temperature outside is this temperature and I'm like, I have to start calculating for temperature differences in my paint, and I'm like, crap, I don't know shit about paint. So there's a whole nother level, I think, of paint that I am just completely oblivious to. I don't know. I don't know what adding the retardants and to make it cure more slowly. How much of that I'm supposed to put in? But
You learn that by experimenting.
but I think that's I don't think that's really necessary for spraying a small piece of model. I think that's more for the larger scale car painting. I'm thinking, but
Not necessarily.
so
Sometimes you'd have like the car modelers who want a high sheen or high gloss.
mm,
They're most likely to be adding retardants to slow the dry time to get a flatter finish.
okay. So you
You
can.
only do it if you want to do it.
What was that?
You only add retardants if you want to add retardant. If you're not happy with your paint finish, you may do research what other additives and chemicals I can use to improve my finish.
So I think the whole area of painting is the depth is quite vast, and I think you can get really into the specifics of paint and retardants and glosses and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people don't know about this, and I clearly I don't know much about this, and I think people would be interested if they're interested in customizing and stuff. What kind of paint I should use and stuff like that. And so I'm thinking painting is a subject which needs to be discussed more. But I want to leave it at that. I want to know more about Australia and the hobbyist over there. What is in Japan, here in Japan, you have, of course, the otakus, and they're, you got, well, they were people here in Japan created Gundam and all this Gunpla and all this stuff. So there's a huge community of really geeky weirdos. But so, how is the Gunpla community in Australia?
Well, geographically speaking, Australia is right under Southeast Asia.
Yeah.
And because we're a large landmass, we acquire a lot of refugees or people migrating to Australia of Middle Eastern or Asian background.
Mm.
And a lot of these individuals have brought Japanese culture with them, such as Gundam kits, anime, whatnot, and opened shops across Australia. And they con people like me into it. So we've got a very strong Gundam modeling community here.
So, I don't know if you know, but it's not, and then again, I don't know about the Gunpla or the modeling community in America, because I didn't get into Gundam until I came over here to Japan and
I
into.
can touch on a tiny bit about
Hmm.
that. I've read on a few forums. America started importing Gundam kits when they released the animation about 10 years ago and started selling it in mainstream shops like Toys R Us.
Hmm.
And they try to make Gundam as popular in America as it is in Japan. Unfortunately, after the Gundam Wing hype, it did die almost completely, and they're trying to redevelop interest with the newer series.
What is what is a Gundam Wing? Is that the series?
It's the series most Western nations would be aware of, since it's the first one that was brought to America and Australia and whatnot. It would be the first Gundam series we've seen.
And okay, and that wasn't popular.
From It was very popular in the West.
No, but but plastic model building wasn't, or Gundams weren't popular in the U.S. Is that what you're saying?
It started off being popular or flavor of the month,
Uh,
and then a few years later, everybody jumped onto a different flavor of the month.
I remember on the show, that '70s show. I don't know if you ever seen that show, but I can't remember the names of. I'm really shitty. I remember people's names, but um, model building was seen, I think, as a really weird geeky hobby, and wasn't very popular. I'm thinking only. Yeah, I don't know how popular model build. When I was a kid, I never built a model, and so I don't know. Are the model builders in Australia viewed as some kind of geeky people?
This is the really interesting thing about that. I've got friends who are into their comic books and card games, and they've seen as geeky. Now, when I share people about my models, people at work and friends outside of my modeling community, they take a lot of interest in it. For example, I was at my father's garage sale and I was putting and sanding a model kit, and I had a young girl interested in it and almost being flirty. I'm not too sure, but I don't think it's seen as geeky. It's more like you have a skill in hand labor building something,
Mm.
like a craft, like a watchmaker.
So sorry, Alan. Your audio is waving again. So
Uh,
is there? Are you like away from the microphone, or are you the same range from the microphone?
I've been sitting in the same range.
Um, maybe I should. I don't know what I should do, but so. Well, yeah, and then I think about Australia has only about 20 million people, and Texas has about 20 million people. So I'm pretty sure in Texas modeling isn't that cool. But uh, so Australia, mm, I don't know. You're in Melbourne. That's it's not the capital. It's no, it's the largest city, right?
Second largest.
Who's the
Sydney would
first?
be the
Oh,
largest.
Sydney. That's right. Yeah.
Our capital city is actually very small. It's in
Yeah.
between Melbourne and Sydney.
Cairns? No,
Canberra.
Cameron? No, I was close. It started with the C. So
Yeah, that's good effort.
yeah, that's right. And my old girlfriend was from Australia, and that's why I have a great Australian accent when I use it. But she's actually Japanese, but she lived a long time in Australia. So 15
Wow.
years in Australia, then moved back to Japan, and then. But and yeah, so a couple of my buddies are Australian. They're um, yeah, Australians are different. I think they're very independent, in my opinion. They're like, yeah, we're Australian. We're gonna do whatever the fuck we want, and that's kind of nice. And like, yeah, they're not subservient to American freedom and justice. So I kind of like that. It's like, yeah, fuck it. We're Australian. We're gonna do whatever the fuck we want. So kind of nice. That's my impression of Australians. Like, and so I give Australians shit um, because they don't give a fuck. They're like, fuck it, fuck you, America, and they're like, all right, good. So I like that.